Welcome one all, my name is Tawess and today we are going to paint a not so miniature. In this case a miniature from Artisan Guild and their Dragon Guard release. Now I was fiddling around with my 3D printer and was like, what should I do with this? I print a lot of small miniatures and I was like, let's see how much we can actually get out of this one. So I started by scaling up to 120% and expected a failure. Nothing failed. The support scaled up perfectly and out came a very nice, I would say little model, but it's not particularly little. So, in essence, this is about decimeter and a half, centimeters perhaps, I don't know, never measured actually. But it's a hefty little thing. It's a solid resin, there's no hollowing in it at all. It's a very hefty little piece. Now, what I'm doing right now is base coating. And I know some people be asking, how do I base coat if I don't have an airbrush? Or a rattle can, spray can? And well, that is how you do it. With a brush and a diluted paint. I know some people have been like, it's become this thing on the internet that you have to have an airbrush to base coat. An airbrush is really nice, but an airbrush has its flaws too. It leaves a speckly pattern. Spray can even worse. So I prefer to do my base coating with a brush. Now, how you end up doing it in the end is up to you. You do what you do. But don't feel that you need to have an airbrush to be able to base coat. As you see this, it's a very smooth, very nice coverage base coat. No airbrush. It does take some more time though, and if you're going to batch paint, of course a spray can is more important because you're not going to do much detail anyway. So I decided to go with this one, a blue dragon, and that is because I intended to paint the armor red and gold. And those red and blue, as you know, they work together very nice as long as you don't put them right next to each other. Because red over blue doesn't always work. You need something more, often yellow. Primary colors are good in that way. Look at Superman. It is when you put them right next to each other. Like for example, if you mix red and blue in a pattern and have no separating color in between, it can become a bit muddy, a bit busy. But if you have separation, bueno. Now, there's not much to be said about painting layer. You always do a good job with the first layer, because if you get down a good solid first layer, and later mistakes will be a lot easier to correct, and it will also be a lot easier to try and adjust. What's that? Not adjust. My English completely gone right now. Adapt was the word I was looking for. Not adjust. Adapt. Adapt if you change your mind along the way. Now, the model itself, as I say, it's a 32 millimeter model from to begin with, and that means that it has a nice level of detail, but it's not detailed as to if it was the actual full bust or something. So some details like the loincloths and the cape, the butt cape, are fairly rough in a lot of places. Big chunks of material, and that's because they're designed to be printed at heroic scale. Not much you can do about that. Now I was trying this new gold that I got from the Army Painter box that came with the Jazz's box, and it's nice. It was a bit darker than I thought it was gonna be, but it was still fairly nice. Play around with that later. Now, as I mentioned, the model comes from Artisan Guild, and I'm not sponsored by them. I do really recommend you check them out if you want nice pre-supported 3D models to print. They right now have undead as a theme, sort of imperial human settlement undeads, and the next month will be, well, Battletoads, in lack of better. Battletoads and frogs can be great. And as you can see, it's easy to scale the models up, and I have a few other ideas of upscale models and orc among other things, but yeah. So you heard me mention that sets armor to be red, so you might wonder why am I painting it silver. We'll get back to that later. There is a plan to the madness. But yeah, basically now laying down a solid layer of silver, and while I'm waiting for the base layer to dry, because if you want to dry brush, you need to do that once the base layer is dry, completely dry, because otherwise there's a good risk you can start rubbing it off, especially as resin can have a fairly sharp edges. As for dry brushing itself, well, it's pretty much you take paint on the brush most of that away, and then slowly brush it over all the raised edges of the model, leaving you can see a lighter tone on the raised areas and a much darker tone in the recesses. It's a quick way to get some 3D effect on a model, and usually on very small models is one of the few sane ways to get a 3D effect on them, unless you are showcase painting. Showcase painting is a completely different thing, and I would recommend people like Juan Hidalgo, among others, to have a look at showcase painting. I don't do showcase painting. This is on the level of supposed to look good enough. Now, we're going over this with a coat of contrast paint from Games Workshop. And contrast paints are basically just a sort of ink. It's a bit glossy, and what it does is that it settles into all these recesses we talked about before and enhances the 3D effect. You could technically paint an entire model in just these, but they would look a bit weird. But they're good from the point of getting some quick depth to your model. I also like this one because it's slightly shiny. It's not shiny, but it's slightly shiny, and adds to the whole dragon aesthetic of having scales. Because these don't have scales particularly pronounced, they are more leathery in their skin. And once that's dry, we go over it again with another dry brush just to pick up some more highlights, because contrast paint dulls those down. I could probably go with a pure white for the first pass on this one, because that is how pigmented the contrast paints are. But as you can see, armor is painted up nicely in silver. We have a gold test down there, and we are doing the highlights for the raised areas. We're going to be jumping around a bit because this thing was painted over roughly 3 weeks. As you can see here, we have differences in light because, well, they're a few days later. Now, one of the things that worth thinking about if you're going to upscale models is that not only the regular ones, so making sure you have enough resin in the tank and make sure it fits on the build plate, but also make sure the supports are actually strong enough. And if you're doubtful that it might, because this one has a lot of suction when it's on the plate, it really won't like to stick. So make sure that you put in a few extra heavy supports just to be on the safe side. That's what I did. I punched in a few on the feet. A few heavy supports extra just to make sure that it stuck. Now, my recipe for painting a nice gold is to have a nice Rune Lord brass in the bottom, and then hitting that with some Retributor armor, I think it's called. Or Gehenna gold if you want a more reddish gold. And I mean, the idea here is to get some depth into the... If you just put gold on black, you get a sharp gold, but you also get a... you get a very flat gold, which sometimes you want. Sometimes you really want a flat gold, and then that's great. But I want a bit more depth to it, so I usually put down a Rune Lord brass first, or any brassy or copper color. As you can see here, I'm talking about, the gold has a nice sheen to it, a nice depth to it. It's not just flat gold. As you can see, the back isn't entirely painted yet. But yeah, why did I paint this off camera? Because, well, it's not that fun to watch me paint a massive amount of gold. But yeah, here is why I painted armor silver, where red comes in. This is red contrast paint, and what it does is that it layers onto the silver very nicely and creates this sort of enameled look, as you can see. You can still see the English gone. The reflectivity, I think so. The word? I don't know, tell me in the comments if it's not a word. And but yeah, you get the reflection of the silver through the red, giving it a very sort of shifting quality because the different thicknesses of contrast paint on top of the silver. So yeah, if you want to paint something like decorative armor or parade armor or, well, just fancy armor, contrast paints over a bright silver is really nice. And I'm gonna hit that with another secret afterwards too, to get it even better. As you can see, I painted over the gold again, so I changed my mind and I changed my mind again. Yeah. Sometimes you just change your mind, it's unavoidable. And here, yeah, as I know that this part I'm not particularly happy with because these are thick, like chunky bits of cloth. They don't look like cloth at all, they look like, I don't know, something. But it's because of upscaling. Had this model been designed for this scale, the materials would have been thinner, but thick. Because they're not designed to be seen from below or from any other angle than slightly from above, so they build an extra support in the inside instead. Yeah. So, not much to say about it. We base coat it, we highlight it, and when we leave it to be, because, well, it's not much more to do with it, as you can see. But again, note that we have separations between the blues and reds and yellows. Here is my secret weapon for armor, and it's gloss Reichland flesh. The gloss is pretty much useless for anything else, but it makes a great surface for armor. So I put this on both the gold and the red, and it deepens the color and gives them this almost enameled shine that doesn't go away entirely. You could also use a non-oil black if you want a more muted but still shiny effect. Love it. Found this up by mistake when I ordered a set of non-oil and Reichland flesh. And instead of getting the regular ones, I had accidentally bought the bright ones, bright and the gloss ones. That was kind of embarrassing. We pick out the Hearthstone and we pick out the... As you can see, we are now starting to come together. We are going to add some more flesh wash to the leathers to make sure that they pop properly. The idea is they're going to look a bit worn, and again, this glossy effect is perfect for that. And yeah, you can see on the other side big chunks of cloth. I paint the book, I paint anything that's supposed to look leather in this flesh wash. And then I accidentally forgot to hit record on the next session. So I painted all these nice flame and gold effects, and It's gone. It's lost to the ether. Never coming back. But it's okay. We can live without it. The only thing worth mentioning that bit sad I'm lost is that the balls in the spell effect are coated in a food grade glitter, making them extra shiny and a bit reflective. But yeah, beyond that, not much to say. This is basically wrapping up stage. We are going to have the model done and dusted. We paint the horns. I'm black, the nails, claws black. Quick dry brush of those, and I hit them with non-oil gloss again to get sort of shine to them compared to the dull skin. And here we go, the final finished product for all intents and purposes. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, and play fair. Bye.